Welcome back to another Pixel Game Maker tutorial. Today is a Patron request from Morgan Douglas, who wants to see how to make a high score system in PGM. So with that said, let's get started. Alright, so here we are in my high score sample pack. You can find this on my samples pack 3, just the second one out right here. And if we go to playtest this, we can kind of see what's going on in here. Basically, this is your title screen. If you press 1, you start a new game. If you press 2, you can view the high score system or the leaderboards just from the title. Right now they're empty because we're on an empty file. And hit escape to go back, and then we can press 3 to delete the save file. These are just quick hotkeys to kind of experiment and see how this leaderboard works. If you press 1 to start a new game, you can see that the score is now up here, and we can press 1 to get points or 2 to die. So if we press 1 a couple times, we now have the points that it's giving is just random, just so you know a certain range. And then if we die, that signifies that this round is over, so the high score system will try to find if it's a new high score or not. And if it is, you're going to be allowed with the arrow keys right here. This tells you exactly what to do. You can press left and right to change the initials. Okay, so let's just say that BDB was my initials. And then when I hit escape, it's going to save it. So now we're back in the title. And now I'm going to hit 2. And we're going to see that now I am number 1, the BDD or BDB got 325 points. Now let's start a new game, see if we can beat that score, and boom, we get a few more. Press 2 to die. It ranks us number 1 because it is above the last number 1, and so let's just name this one BAA. Press escape to go back to title. Let's view the leaderboards now, and we see that BAA is now number 1, and BDB is now number 2. And let's just, you can kind of see that this basically updates itself. So if we, let me try to get a new number 2. So let's just press points one more time. Yeah, right here. So then we die. You can see that we're rank 2 because we went in between 1 and 3. And so we could just say, I'm just going to say AAA on this one. And if we view the high scores, we have BAA, AAA, and BDB, which is correct. And I did this up to 5. Now you could scale it using how I did the workflow here, but as far as this sample goes, I only did 5, and the workflow will get bigger and bigger the more that you want. So I wouldn't recommend going over a number like 10 or something like that, but 5 was pretty manageable actually. So now let's get into how this actually works. So firstly, we're in the objects tab here, and we have a high score system. So this is going to be the high score system as far as the viewer. Okay, so when you're in the title screen and you're viewing them. Then we have a game over and high score input. This is the objects that are in control of when the game over happens or when the input happens for the initials. All right. And then we have just a traditional title input control. The really only thing to note about this is on a new game, you're going to want to set the current score to 0, just from the way that you can view the information on the leaderboard in the title. You want to make sure that you're always resetting at least the score to 0. All right, and then the next part is we have a point control here. This is just showing the text on how to get the points. So for instance, press 1 to get points, stuff like this, get points. And then when we call the game over, it's going to show a menu right here. And this is the menu called game over menu. So you can see that in the scenes here, under the menu scene, I'm using a view high score menu. So this is the one that you'd see in the title screen. And then I'm using a game over menu. This is the one that you'll see when you press 2 to die. All right. And then I just have a title scene with the input control. And then I have a level point or a level get points, I called it. And that has the point control and the score text. All right. And so that's basically, oh, and then you have the score text, which this is just showing the text. All right. And this is also how we determine if there's a new high score or not. So basically the text is determining this. And then you can see that we have, this is a new high score. So what we do is we change the current high score to be the current score. So this is tracking if you go over the high score. So if current score is above the current high score, then it's going to trigger that. All right. Now let's get into some of those, actually, the variables. Go to the resources here, go to variables. You can see that we have a high score system right here. We have 2 do not keep on saves, which is current score and high score. So these will never actually be saved, which is nice because you only want them during the run. You only need them during the run, right? And then you can see that we have high score 1, high score 2, score 3, 4, and 5. So you would need, and then you can see that we have initial 1, initial 2, and initial 3. So for every high score that you want, you're going to have a high score variable and 3 initials to basically follow it, all right? And that's really all the setup that you need. You need a current score, current high score, the rank to set, and then the high score 1, and then the initials that go with that high score number, I guess. Right? You don't need any switches or anything like that. All right, so moving along, let's go look at the game over high score. So, right, this is the only object that is in the menu scene. So if we go to here, right here, we can see that this high score, this one is in the high score menu one, and then this one is in the game over menu. This is the setup updater, all right? So the first thing that it's going to do is it's going to check the high score, all right? And it's going to say, is the current score greater than high score 1? If it is, then we're going to replace things. If it's not, then it's going to move down here and it's going to check if current high score is greater than high score 2. And so that's how you that's how we get what position it's in. So let's just say that if it's number 1, because once you understand the first one, you can understand how it trickles down to all these other ones. So it's greater than higher 1. So the first thing that it's going to do, it's going to go to replace the high score 1. Now, the first thing you can see is that we are replacing some variables. For instance, a last score, a last letter 1, a last letter 2, and a last letter 3. All right, so these ones you can see that are object self. So in the object here, we have last score, last letter 2, and last letter 3. And these are basically holders for the last score. So for instance, you can see that the last score is going to equal high score 1 because now high score 1 is going to equal high score 2. So we need to be able to store what that score was. We also need to store the initial for letter 1, letter 2, and letter 3. And now we can set the high score 1 to now equal the new current score. And then we're going to also set this rank to 1. And I'll show you why we need this rank to set variable here in a second. And then we're going to save the file so that everything can be saved. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to generate an object called high score control. So it's just this one right here. And this is going to give us the control over the input. All right. Now we'll go over this. Let's see here. Let's go over this right now because basically it stands by, this object now stands by until that object that we generate is in the done or update the score state. All right. So let's move on to this high score control and see what it's doing. You can see I've highlighted this green because that is literally where everything will stand still until you're done with the input. And that's a nice way of generating an input, waiting for the input, and then continuing with whatever the update was. All right, so what this one does is it moves into position, basically just coordinates to the middle of the screen, basically. And then it's going to display some text just for info. And you can see, so that's how I get like the score, the rank, the name, the rank to set. This is that important one. And I'm using a text tag here to show the rank to set. So this is how you can update it from rank to set being like first rank or second rank or something like that. So we get that from that variable. And then this one just shows what the current score was. All right. So after all those texts are shown, now we go to the actual input part where we're looking for a letter. All right. So these are just normal inputs where you press left and right to go to and from the input. This is where you could have an animation of, like a little line underneath the letters if you wanted. But you can see that right now it's kind of invisible. You just have to play with the arrow keys, but it's fine. It works. But this is where you'd put that animation. So now the important thing to understand is that there is an initial 1, initial 2, and initial 3 object. And they are connected objects to this high score control, right? So when you're pressing the up and down, what you're doing is you're changing the initial 1, you're changing the HP plus 1 or the HP minus 1. And the reason I did this is because the HP has a max and a minimum. So you can't go lower and you can't go higher. And I'll show you why here in just a second. But just note that when you're pressing up and down on letter 1, you're changing the initial 1. When you're pressing up and down on letter 2, you're changing initial 2. And then the same for letter 3. All right, so now let's just go to one of these so that you can understand what's going on here. Basically, it's using a motion, which is called alphabet. You go to the animations here under this right here, you can see that I have broken down the alphabet into animation frames. And so I'm using them as animation frames. So this first frame is going to be 0, and they're all set to 1 frame each. That's important as well. They're all 1 frame. You can see that we just have them all set like this. And basically, there are only so many of these keys, right? So in the basic settings, I've set my HP parameter starting at 1, so everything is A, right? Because 0 would be blank. And then the max HP is 26 because we can only have 26. There's only 26 letters. All right, so that's how you can use that minimum and maximum for your benefit by changing the HP. And so what this is doing is it's setting the animation frame equal to its HP. And then when its animation frame is not equal to its HP, then it just basically gets a new letter and it just keeps repeating until it's set, right? And so all initials are doing this. So now back in the high score, when you are done, or in this case, when cancel is pressed and the game is reset, then this is going to continue and move on. And yeah, this is actually where it goes back to title. All right, so when that object is in the done update scores, it's going to go to save the initials. So now the new initials that you have selected are going to be the new ones from initial 1, initial 2, and initial 3 HP, because those are the values that we want to show the letters. Then it's going to unconditionally go to reorder the scores. So then it's going to go score 5 equals score 4, score 4 equals score 3, score 2 equals score 2, score 2 equals the last score. That was why we needed the last score, all right? And then it reorders initials. It reorders the initials. This is going to be a little longer because we've got to do 5 1 5 2 5 3. Those got to be now 4 1 4 2 4 3. You can see how this pattern is repeating. And then at the number 2 slot, since this is a new number 1, we just get the last letter, which is stored in this object, right, in these variables, and then the letter 2, letter 3. Then the last thing it does is it executes object, goes back to title, in which case it then saves everything, and then it resets the game. So that is exactly what's happening. You can see that these are the same logic. You can just see that they're less. Well, this one is the same no matter what, but you can see that the save initials, these are the same too as well. But in the reordering, it just gets a little less and a little less. So this one has 1 less 1 to go through. This one has 1 less 1 to go through, 1 less 1 to go through. And then if it's replacing the last one, it doesn't have to restore anything. So right after it replaces, it can then save it and go. But you can see that these ones also get shorter too. You can see this one we have to do all the initials. This one we only have to do 3 initials, and then this one 2 initials or 2 slots of initials. And then the last one we only have to do 1 slot of initials. And again, for the last one, we don't have to do any of them. So this is how the actual saving works. When you get a game over, you get a new high score, no matter what rank. This is how the process is working. So now let's just go real quick to the high score viewer. Now the high score viewer, it's kind of needs to be set up to show all of them. So you can see right here, I just have a real quick control, and then we have the high score 1, the high score 2. You can see that I move it into position and I display the score. So I'm displaying a text called for rank 2, and then I'm displaying the high score 2 in this particular case. Now this could be set up, however you want. This is just how I did it. But the important thing is that on these objects, it has the initial 1, 2, and 3. And then these initials, what they're going to do is they're going to set it based off of the initial 1, the animation frame, sorry, based off the initial 1, 1. Then this one's going to set the animation frame based off the initial 1, 2, and so on and so on. So these ones are actually grabbing the common variables to set their animation. And it's kind of nice because you don't have to set them. They're already set. So that's all you need. But you do want to have the high score row, and then you want to have these 3 things. And you can see that I'm adjusting the position where I want them on the X according to this. So that's how I get that to work there. And so basically, yeah, you just need one for each high score system that you get. And then make sure that they're doing the correct ones. So this one is doing the 5-1, the 5-2, and the 5-3 initial. All right. And then in the actual scene itself, you only have to have the high score control, because you can see the high score control right here. What it does is I'm real quickly changing the file slot to 0. I'm showing the score, rank, and name, basically the columns of the thing. Then I'm loading the common variables only, because those are the only information that we need to show. And then we're generating the high scores. Now, you can see that I just do this really slow, so that there's like a boom, 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 kind of a process to it. You could do them all instantly if you wanted, stuff like this. Now, I have this thing unused. I'm actually just going to delete it, so the final sample won't have any of this stuff. But yeah, you can see that this is what it is. And that's why it's important, because when you're loading the common variables, that's why it's important at the title screen that when you do start a new game, that you are setting the current score to 0, because that's what we need to know. So, and then let's see here. Yep. And then when you hit escape from the scene, it just goes back to, and that is being controlled from right here, I think it is. Yeah, view high scores. So when you press 2, it takes you to the high score screen, right? And then when you press escape, that's what hides it. It basically just hides it. Now, the other important thing to note is that you need to load the common variables like right away. I know that I do it kind of redundantly in here, but in the title, you also want to load the common variables. So I hope this video and sample project help you out. If you have any questions, comments below, Steam forums, Discord will get you figured out. With that said, I'll see you at the next video.